Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished entrepreneur uh, from Dusseldorf, Germany, Mr. Rajeshwar Bachu. Rajeshwar, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Rajeshwar is the founder of Zero Carbon. He's the co-founder of 42 Hacks. He's a public speaker and an author of 2 books. So, Rajeshwar, before we start talking of Zero Carbon, tell me your own journey in brief and what got you interested in this whole area.
Like since childhood, I have interest in business. So since my family was also into business, so since childhood I was in business. But my dad was not in a business, but he was a government employee.
Hmm.
But rather then I thought, okay, since generations we have passed the knowledge of business
Hmm.
across the generations from my fathers, great grandfathers, and my aunts and uncles, and so on.
Hmm.
So there I learned more about business, and after coming to Germany, I have seen the startup culture over here and found that it's better to start a business in Europe, which is more into climate friendly and sustainability. Yeah.
Hmm. Very interesting. So let's talk about Zero Carbon. Tell me a little bit about the venture and what was your motivation to start it?
Yeah, basically, first I started with the idea because I have several ideas, and um, then I came up with a single idea that can help the uh, in the battery innovation and battery charging technology. But when I have seen the future of after 10 years, like there is no customer base, and it is due to the climate change,
Hmm.
and nobody might be suffering from people might be suffering from the, what do you say, the climate change effects, like floods, droughts, and without money and no internet connections and so on.
Hmm.
So then I thought, okay, which is the area to focus on? And then I thought about zero carbon, and zero carbon is mostly to make the future of digitalization more green, clean, and sustainable. So that's the agenda where we are going forward.
Hmm. And Rajeshwar, you say that your passion is to transform the world and the environment by carrying the torch for the future.
Yeah.
Uh, Tell me a little more about this very, very interesting mission that you have set for yourself, and do give me an
Uh,
example.
So the mission is that have set the mission to be a torchbearer in that area, because there is no one in this sector of environment and climate change and sustainability taking the torch forward.
Hmm.
And when we have seen the Indian culture, African culture, Brazilian culture, we used to live sustainably
Hmm.
before even 19th century. As you know, like we used to buy the goods locally, we used to source all the products locally. There is no
Hmm.
Amazon, there was no Reliance, so there is no big tycoons, and there was also no internet at the time of point
Hmm.
time. And when you see today, the internet has changed most of the world, and again we are coming back to the same thing, like sustainability and minimalism and so on, where we have grown up and we have seen all the stuff. And I think that's where I want to lead. And also today's agriculture is also very bad in position, the soil efficiency is very bad,
Hmm.
and again on the other hand, carbon emissions are high, and on the other hand water is also getting polluted.
Hmm.
So with starting with this digital infrastructure and digital innovation, we want to take forward the idea of creating a better future
Hmm.
all over the world. So that's the main plan to
Hmm.
make it in the future.
Hmm. And you also say that you are a sustainability activist. Uh, Tell me about the work you are doing as an activist, and a little more about this whole work that you're doing on for sustainability.
Yeah, people, we have spoken about sustainability goals, right? So there are many sustainability goals, 17 sustainability goals,
Yeah.
and there again people will follow very less in the
Mm.
sustainability goals. We are only aware of climate and water problem and other issues. And if you see the education issue across the world in Africa, if you see the all the different stuff, for example, like agriculture and food, and food crisis across southern nations of the world.
Mm.
and there are many other things. So in that case, what I do is like I speak about these things on like LinkedIn mostly, and I also speak them about in events, on climate tech events, and
Mm,
in the public places. And also I will also raise the voice when there is something like sustainable washing, because I also say it's a sustainable washing,
mm,
because not all products are sustainable. And on the other hand, I also want to implement these sustainable development goals in our business organization,
mm,
and also as a encouraging the local talent and bringing the localization along with globalization.
mm, very interesting. So tell me, based on the work that you're doing in Europe, when you look at the boardrooms of companies, how seriously is sustainability being taken there? Or is it just lip service in Europe, in the UK, the US, and back in our own country in India?
I think it's only lip service, because see, if you say equality, and there should be equal wages between all the caste, creed, color, and religion,
Mm,
and they should be treated very perfectly in the work environments,
yeah.
and there should be more ethical values for the workers, and you should
Mm,
not make them work hard like 10 hours or 12 hours and so on.
mm,
And you should also provide basic health benefits for the from the organizational point of view. For
mm,
example, some private organizations doesn't even also provide health benefits. You
mm,
have to have your own health insurance in that case.
mm,
So no organization in my perspective is following fully sustainable development goals, and they're just speaking out, and some are just buying the carbon certificates and mitigation certificates and so
mm.
on. But at the end of the day, there is very less in the action part.
Very interesting. My next question to you is that, you've been speaking about the sustainability development goals of the United Nations. Um, what are some of the critical challenges we are facing in the world, which are being encapsulated in the SDGs?
Mostly all of the problems are then encapsulated in that. For example, if you take Africa, the educational part of the people in Africa, and or else even Brazil or Amazon, or
Mm,
also even in the southern parts of countries like Philippines or Maldives, wherever.
mm,
And if you see Bangladesh also, and Sri Lanka, so there are so many countries that has education wise problems, and also treating inequality and workers problem. Like even in China, they work 10 hours and 15 hours, and I think that's also should be maintained and reported accordingly. And yeah, so these are many things. They are encapsulated already in equality wise, and the diversity wise, health wise, and
mm,
climate wise, and also if you see the soil fertility, and also it has been also encapsulated in land and biodiversity. So
mm,
most of the problems across the world has been encapsulated in that.
mm. And why do you think sustainability is so crucial for financial markets?
It's crucial for everyone, for today, tomorrow, and next generations, because if for example, if you see the soil fertility is very bad, you get health issues. And if you air is bad, in Delhi the air is very bad, that you get lung
Mm,
issues like lung cancer and so on. And if you see the water pollution, and most of the body is concerned of water, 70
mm,
plus percent of water. So, and if these things are polluted, and these things are very bad in the environment, and whatever you consume, you're going to get ill, and health issues, cancers, and other bigger problems. And it might also affect the education as well. For example, let's take COVID, and it has
mm,
been impacted education, because people studied from homes. So everything might create an impact, of course, but people were not seeing its longer picture
mm,
coming to it. And when you see the longer picture, you will understand like it will affect each and every area, and each and every zone and region also.
mm. And there's often a comment made that the biggest challenge that has been created by for the world is by the Western countries, and now they are expecting India, China, and other developing nations to pay for it. What are your thoughts on this?
For me, I will say we are all equal in it, because either it's Western country or Eastern countries, it doesn't make any sense for me,
Mm,
for example, India, if you see India or China, is getting economically benefited when you transport the goods made in India or China
mm,
to USA or South Africa, South America, wherever it is.
mm,
And and US is the largest consumer, and you get paid in taxes, you get paid in trade shows and so on. You are
mm,
benefiting your economy, of course. We are all equal in it. So we all have to act. So either it's Western or Eastern, stop the blame game, I would say.
mm.
So if you see the food industry will blame the clothing industry will blame the plastic industry. So it's
Correct.
not, it's like you should stop the blame game and start
Mm,
action. Just
well said. There is another aspect that people talk about, and this is from an economic perspective, that if you have a very, very aggressive sustainability strategy, it is going to affect negatively the GDP of your country.
uh, s- again, the GDP is of course will be affected. Like when you pay equally all across the world, it will be affected. The GDP will be almost equal.
Mm,
So, but why are we fighting for GDP is the biggest question for me. Why are we fighting for the being economically strong or economically dominant countries?
mm,
Why don't we be equal countries, and
mm,
why don't we treated all equal? So
mm,
why do we really want the GDP domination countries?
mm. Interesting. Uh, Two more questions on sustainability, and then we'll move to some questions for you on startups. Uh, Young people like yourself, the millennials, the Gen Zs, are changing the way we think about sustainability.
Yeah.
What do they or the younger people need to do, or the younger leaders like yourself need to be able to convert or change the minds of baby boomers like me?
I would say it's not about changing, because uh, for me, the ancient generations or the previous generations have been tackled their problems. What is there in the economical way or in the generational wise? For example, India has got ruled by British for 200 years, and we have coped up with it. And we have started after the freedom, we started developing our nation and so on. So
Mm,
I don't blame the generations. I don't blame any other people, because it's not, it's where we came from, and I don't need to blame anyone. And
mm,
all have the knowledge about the nature and environment. It's in their blood. Everyone came from the element stage,
mm,
and we know about starting a fire to what do you say, growing a food, and like sowing a seed in the soil and growing a plant. So it doesn't, for me, nobody needs to teach people, and we are whatever we are. But the thing is, like, younger generations are mostly concentrating on this, because older generations have not concentrated, that's all.
very interesting.
because
Go ahead.
because it's the problem, because it's their survival issue, and it's their problem, and they had solved it. But
Mm,
our when it comes to our problem is nature and environment and so on. So
mm,
I see this is the biggest challenge for us, because previously there was problems of economy and finding a jobs and
mm,
salary,
mm,
getting paid salaries and so on.
mm,
Then they have survived it. But now our generation biggest problem is climate change, and attaining sustainability and getting, because the population has also hit 8 billion when you see.
mm.
And when you are it is not even 8 billion, it might be at least 6 billion or something like that.
Correct.
So it's also growing, and our problem is also growing, so that's why
Mm.
we need to more concentrate on this.
Well said. Uh, One more question, and this is again asked by many, many people as individuals. We most people understand how important it is to do ensure climate change is managed, or waters are managed, or health is managed. For someone who knows this, so well, what would you say are some tips that each one of us as individuals can do to support?
I think everyone can support, and one thing is like trying to reduce their consumption mostly. The consumption is the one of the biggest leading factor and the leading problem that either leading climate change or leading sustainability, whatever it is. And consumption is the biggest problem. Just don't buy the goods which you don't need, and unnecessary goods buying is also waste of not only money but also waste of carbon emissions, because it travels A to B, B to C, and C to D, and again you send back, and it goes to again D to C and C to B and B to A. So there is so much of carbon emissions emitted. So don't buy unnecessary things, and let consume less, and have a good and better health. And
Well said. Great response. So, Rajeshwar, now I'm going to move to startups. And you have advised more than 100 startups and heard more than 50,000 startup ideas. Let me start by asking you that, based on your own experience, what are some of the basic mistakes startup entrepreneurs make?
the thing is, one is giving up
Mm-hmm.
if it is not getting what do you say, if it is not getting solved, or if it is not getting the problem, and problem getting not solved. Like for example, if you have come up with idea and if it's not making out into the industry, they'll just give up, one thing. And most of the startups, they do one of the biggest problem is they come up with a solution and try to find the problem statement.
Okay.
So that's the biggest problem. It's not the solution you want to offer, but try to get the problem, what's the people
Right.
are facing really. And they don't even do the market research, and they come out and say, okay, this is the problem of the people,
Hmm.
but ultimately it's not the problem. If you go out and speak to the people, they have their own different problems, and I would say most people come up with a solution before even the problem statement.
Well said. Great response. My next question is that, based on so many people you must have interacted with, what are some of the important qualities that you look for in a startup entrepreneur?
One, I look for the leadership qualities.
Mhm.
Two, I look for the negotiation skills.
Mhm.
And three, I also look for the philanthropical skills, because when it comes to environment and climate change, you should also have a philanthropical perspective.
Mhm.
Not only economical benefit is a benefit, but also environmental benefit is also benefit for the future.
Mhm. The next question, Rajeshwar, is on funding. And it's often been asked that, should one bootstrap as long as possible, or should one raise money whenever it is available? What are
Mm.
your thoughts?
I think raising money is most good one than bootstrapping, because when you raise money, you come to know the different people's perspective, from investors' perspective point of view, and you also analyze yourself
Mhm.
why this investor is not investing in my company.
Mhm.
Then you would analyze yourself and the company, and then you understand why the business model might not work and in their perspective, so that might help you to tweak the idea and change the business model.
Mhm.
And I think business funding is the best way, I think.
Mhm. Interesting. I have time for two more questions. My next question is on scaling up.
Mm,
Every startup entrepreneur that I have spoken to wants to go pan India, wants to go global. And I keep telling them, what is the hurry? If you're in a city like, say, New Delhi, you have the population of Australia in the national capital region. Why do you
yes.
have to go national or global?
Mm.
My question is, when should a startup start to scale up?
That's an interesting question, but I think it's important to scale when you have a framework.
Hmm.
For example, when you have a framework, when you have settled up your business in Delhi, and you build a framework,
Hmm.
and then it's better to scale up. Because when you see the businesses like Tesla, when you see the businesses like Google, Amazon, they have scaled up, not like when they have started. They
Mm.
scaled up when they have a framework, and when their company is growing, they scaled up. It's when it is necessary to scale up, then you have to scale up. It's not that you just scale up, increase the funding requirement and increase the salaries and hire more people. It doesn't make any sense,
Mm.
because ultimately the product is very small. And if the product is small, like if Elon Musk, like, people comes to Twitter, they just fire the people,
Mm.
so
Well said. And my last question to you, Rajeshwar, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your own amazing journey, both in the world of sustainability and in the world of startups, what would you say are three lessons you want our viewers and listeners to take away?
yeah, one thing is what I have heard previously is each business have to succeed, and 1:1. For
Hmm.
example, it's not left a football goal 0:1 or 1:0,
Right.
but it should be 1:1. And on the other hand, not all ideas are great ideas.
Hmm.
And one more thing is, like, sustainability is key to the life,
Hmm.
but sustainability is not about sustaining yourself. It's all about sustaining the planet.
Yeah. Wonderful. And on that note, and your three amazing lessons, uh, each business must succeed independent of on its own, rather than keep on looking for crutches from someone else. Not all ideas are great. I think it's a very powerful statement you have made. And third one you said was sustainability is not about you, but it's about the planet. Thank you, Rajeshwar, for speaking to me. Thank you for talking about zero carbon. Thank you for talking about how sustainability is being looked at by younger people like you, by the world, where the opportunities lie. Thank you also for speaking about some of the key features that you look for in a startup entrepreneur, which is the ability to see their leadership capability, the negotiation capability, and and their willingness to be philanthropic. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
And I can also add on that about 42 hacks, basically. And at 42 hacks, we are bridging the gap between the climate promises and actions. And so, if anybody want to looking for solutions in the industries for climate change and sustainability and implementing those goals, you can come to us at 42 hacks, and we'll solve your problem with
Fantastic.
hackathons.
Fantastic. So that's a great point you made. For anyone looking for any kind of solutions in climate change, reach out to Rajeshwar at 42 Hacks. Is
Yes.
42hacks.com?
Yes.
42hacks.com. Thank you, Rajeshwar.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.